2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to P&P Live. I'm Brad Graham, the co-owner of Politics and Prose, along with my wife, Lissa Muscatine. And thanks for joining us here online, where we've been able to move many of our events in response to the current pandemic and continued need for social distancing. In this virtual format, you can see us, but we can't see you. And you can still ask a question. To do so, just click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. And in the chat column, we'll be posting a link to purchase this evening's featured book, The Art of Her Deal by Mary Jordan. Mary will be in conversation with Sally Quinn, two great veteran journalists talking about a first lady who, 3.5 years into her husband's presidency, has remained in many ways hidden and enigmatic. Mary has managed, through persistence and skillful reporting, to provide a much clearer and definitive portrait of Melania Trump, her past, her relationship with Donald Trump, and her influence within his administration. Doing this book, as Mary writes early on, proved to be the biggest challenge of her career as a Washington Post journalist. And that's saying a lot, because Mary has often written about reclusive and reticent figures over the course of her 36 years with the Post. Mary joined the paper fresh after earning a master's in journalism and eventually found her way abroad for what ended up being 3 distinguished tours as a foreign correspondent. She served as co-bureau chief with her husband, Kevin Sullivan, in Tokyo, Mexico City, and London. And the two of them won the Pulitzer in 2003 for international reporting for an investigation of the Mexican justice system. Along the way, Mary and Kevin authored 2 books, and in recent years, Mary's been covering American politics. The conversation with Mary is Sally Quinn, who I know is familiar to many of you. Her own accomplished career as a journalist and author, Washington socialite, and wife to the late, great Ben Bradley, is chronicled in her own memoir, Finding Magic. So Mary and Sally, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be fun. First, Mary, I would just like to compliment your son, Tom Sullivan, because he's the one who came up with this brilliant title, The Art of Her Deal.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. So no more poor Melania, right? No more mystery woman, no more free Melania. That's what I got out of this book. And having read the whole thing very carefully, I have come to the conclusion that not only is she not poor Melania, and I want you to tell me whether I'm wrong or not, but she is a killer. And not only that,
Let's start with a nice easy one, right, Sally?
She and Donald Trump are the same person.
Well, I wouldn't
say in the book that they are sort of like the same person.
I say that they're alike in ways that you wouldn't necessarily think. I think because he's so loud, she's so quiet, he's so impulsive, she's a chess player, you know, it's very apparent how different they are. But at core, they are quite alike. You know, just for beginners, they're both hyper-conscious of image.
Yes.
Even if the image is not really reality. You know, I mean, Donald Trump said he's taller than he is. Donald Trump says there's more floors in Trump Tower than there actually is. And so when I was looking into Melania, I just found that some of the things on her resume weren't exactly where the evidence was. So for instance, she had said that she has a college degree. Well, I was in Slovenia. I talked to those who had her in class in college, and they said she never sat for the exams the first year, and she left when she was 19. She said she was, I found videotape where she was in Paris in 1998. So she was 28 years old. And this amazing day, and I found everybody that was at that press conference because she had back-to-back interviews. And in there, she says she was one of the top 50 models in the world. And a reporter asked and wrote at the time, and I had it translated from Slovenian that was published, and it was in several publications. Oh, I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep talking.
Keep
if
talking.
You can still hear me.
We were
But,
just asking Brad, what do we do if something goes wrong? He said, nothing ever goes wrong.
That's funny. Well, but I could keep talking. I was just
Keep
saying
talking.
that, you know, she had said that she was one of the top models in the world and one of the highest paid. And that just wasn't true. But there's other ways too. You know, they're both distrustful of others, anybody but family. They're both love fine things. You know, Trump thinks nothing of having gold-plated seatbelts in his plane. Melania thinks nothing of having a $50,000 jacket. At the same time, they're both wildly frugal. You know, I talked to housekeepers who said that Trump, you know, wouldn't let them throw out the sliver of soap in the shower. And in the White House, Melania has turned curtains around in the green room and some of the public rooms she was refurbishing. And she said, you know, you don't really need to throw those out. One side is all faded, but if you flip them around and change the fringe. So anyway, they both pay attention to detail. They both are absolutely happy to spend very little time with each other as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll get back to that because throughout the book, there are obviously other ways in which they are alike as well. But I think that one of the things that everybody wants to know about, and so we should just cut to the chase on the prenup. And the prenup came after the Access Hollywood tape, and she was, you know, she didn't back down. I mean, she sort of made a statement about, well, that was just boy talk, and she was obviously very angry about it. But she went through with the election, but she didn't come down to Washington. What was the holdup?
You know, Melania, first of all, I believe the prenup negotiations, I don't have the exact date, but they started during the campaign. And she said, look, I have been with you now longer than any other woman. When I signed that before their wedding in 2005, I didn't have to be a public figure, and on and on. He dragged it out. He was campaigning. She wasn't on the campaign trail. And then he won. And that was the moment, especially when he really, you know, he wrote in his book, The Art of the Deal, that leverage is when you have something the other person wants. Mm-hmm. And better yet, absolutely needs. So this was the moment. Melania was no dummy. She knew that it would look bad if she stayed in New York the whole time. She knew it would look bad, for instance, if she swatted his hand away. They were still negotiating when she had the famous hand swat that went around the world in Israel. So, you know, what did she made a move at the right time. If she had negotiated it when he was a New York businessman, she did not have the leverage she had when he won and he was in politics.
She clearly would not. I mean, he probably would not have won the election after the Access Hollywood tape if she hadn't stuck by him.
Oh, I think that's 100% true because, look, you know, he won by such a slim margin. I mean, he didn't win the popular vote, but in Pennsylvania. So Access Hollywood happens, and I have the scene in the book where it's Chris Christie and Steve Bannon and Trump and Hope Hicks and all there, and they hit the button on the video. And everybody, it's 1 month out from the election, and they cannot believe the disgusting lewd language. And very quickly, the whole conversation went, oh my God, if Melania doesn't stay.
Let's get to her.
I mean, you know, Chris Christie was saying it was the elephant in the room. And it took Trump 2 hours to get in the elevator in Trump Tower and go up and talk to her. Because and they begged her, they begged her to go on TV with him, and she said no. She took her time, and ultimately she did go on CNN, and she really backed him up. She really backed him up.
Well, you know, I remember her saying it's boy talk. It's boy talk.
Yes. She not only did that, you know, that's her MO. It's very different from Trump. Trump gets mad fast and just starts blurting out. She was furious, but she took her time and days. But then she made her move, and she not only backed him up, but she was even attacking women. And she said in this famous interview with Anderson Cooper, when he was talking about, hey, there's other women who come forward, and she switched the conversation and said, well, I've been there when other women come up to him and I'm standing there and it's inappropriate and they're throwing themselves basically at him.
But it seemed to me, as following her career, that when they got together, I think in 1998, and then around 1999, he started talking about maybe wanting to run for president. She was all in then.
All in.
All in. And so all this business about she didn't, they had to drag her to the White House and all that, it seems to me that she has been an all in all the time, and that she loves being First Lady. I mean, it's a great deal for her. And what I'm fascinated by, one of the other things that seemed alike about both of them is that they both grew up in a place that they didn't want to be. I mean, Trump's father had money, but he grew up in the Bronx, and he was described by his friends, what little few friends he had, as somewhat of a loner. He always had his eye on the main chance, which was over the bridge and get to New York. And he wanted to be a part of the New York crowd, and he never made it. And that's one of the things that stuck in his craw all these years, is that he was never accepted by the sort of A-list financiers and money people and the socialites in New York that he just longed to be a part of. They made fun of him. Melania had the same thing. I mean, she grew up in Slovenia. Her mother, as Trump's father sort of pushed him, her mother pushed her. She was modeling when she was a child, and she just couldn't wait to get out of there. And again, she was a loner too. So that part of it was fascinating to me, that they had that same kind of upbringing in a way.
And even, I talk to people that, she's so mysterious, right? This book, I did not set out to make a case for or against Melania Trump. She's not an elected official, but she is a historic figure, and she does have influence over Trump. So there's just a weirdly huge vacuum of information. And I noticed it during the campaign. And I just said, I got to find out more about her. I think because I was a foreign correspondent and she had only come to America at 26, part of the issue was that the documents and the people were abroad. So I went to Vienna, where she worked. I went to Milan. I went to Paris to talk to roommates. I mean, someone has to know her, right? And so bit by bit, you keep hearing little things. And then if you hear them over and over again, I think you feel pretty strong about what she wanted to do. She not only wanted to be wealthy, because she did not grow up wealthy, she wanted to be famous.
Yeah. Well, she says at one point, I think she goes to Milan. Her mother takes her to Milan because she wins some prize, and she's trying to become a model there. And she tells somebody that she wants to be Sophia Loren. She wants to be bigger than Sophia Loren. I mean, that sounds like a Donald Trump line to me, I mean.
But when she said that, they had not met yet.
Yeah. No, I know that. But I mean, it's amazing that she had that kind of aspiration as this little girl from a middle, modest family in Slovenia, and she would go to at age 19 and say, I want to be bigger than Sophia Loren. And so I thought that was interesting.
And by the way, I just want to talk about the movie. She wanted to be an actress.
Right.
And so she tried. And I think Sophia Loren was an obvious model because she grew up in Italy. She grew up speaking Italian and then learned English and made it in Hollywood. And that is what Melania said. And she told reporters in Paris that. But so she comes to America that year when she was 28 years old, she was in a cigarette ad. It was Camel's cigarette. And it was kind of, at the time, she was on this huge billboard near Times Square. And I found that picture of her that was in the tobacco advertising. I found it in the archives at Stanford University. That's a whole other thing about how hard the Trumps had made some of her old photos. But when I found that cigarette ad, one thing leads to another. And then I heard something about a movie director saw that ad and asked her to audition for a movie. It was a movie that was slated to be with Mickey Rourke. So this guy, Craig Singer, he's an American film director, sees her on this ad, calls the agent, and they have an audition. He thought she was beautiful, good for the part. He asked her to read 3 words. The restaurant was called Bones. And all she had to say for him was, Bones, swanky, swanky. But he said, when I found Singer, he said that when she read it, her accent was so thick he couldn't cast her in this American movie. And that was kind of it. She was 28, and she, as far as I could find, she never pursued any more about being an actress.
And yet when she went to Paris for this photo shoot, when they brought all these Slovenian journalists in, she told them that she had this part, that she was already in the movie, and she was going to be in the movie with Mickey Rourke. She also, I think at the time, was 29 and told them she was 26. And I think also she was, that was the time where she said she had graduated and gotten her bachelor's degree from the architecture school. And also that she spoke 4 languages, that she spoke German, Italian, French, and English, as well as Slovenian. And in the book, you pretty much say that she speaks English and Slovenian. There's not any indication that she speaks any of those other languages.
I couldn't find any evidence. This is it's been told so many times. Melania has said it in interviews. Donald Trump brags about it. And so I asked the White House, I said, could you show me like a video where she is speaking fluently? I mean, there was a couple little clips online where she goes to like a kindergarten in Italy and sits down with little kids and says buongiorno or a few bambino, like words that pretty much everybody knows, very few, and then immediately switches to English. And, similar thing in France. But for instance, like you can find whole speeches that Jackie Kennedy gave in French and in Spanish. So in the age of the iPhone, where it's so easy to take a video of somebody speaking, I just said, can you show me some evidence? So when they didn't respond, then I went everywhere she had gone as First Lady and said to the people, well, maybe she had like side conversations with the Italian Prime Minister or the French Prime Minister's wife. And so just for months, I called everyone I could think of and say, how's her German, how's her French, how's her Italian? And pretty much everybody said, well, I don't know, we spoke English. And so all I can say is if she does speak these languages, I just couldn't find any evidence of it.
Mary, I have to say you got blood out of a stone. You did an amazing reporting job. When you talk about the camel ad and the fact that she said she was one of the 50 top models in the world, she did some nude modeling. You want to talk about that a little bit?
What do you want to talk about, Sally?
Well, we haven't even started yet.
The hardest part about reading the audiobook was reading some of the captions that were in the men's magazines. Anyway, but we won't go there. But so she was, first of all, Cindy Crawford and lots of models at the time were in these magazines. She was a model. She has said that she is proud of her body. She certainly did pose nude. She posed nude with a nude other woman in very suggestive poses.
Why do you think she did that? Because that's a little bit over the line in terms of just...
Well, it's not over the line unless you're going to be First Lady. Models do this. It depends on how you define the line. And I don't think Betty Ford and, Nancy Reagan, did this, but I don't know if she thought when she was doing that.
Rosalind.
Or Rosalind, so I don't know. It is something that models do. And I do think that in Europe, there's a different sensibility than maybe in America. But for sure, it is unusual for a First Lady. How about that she posed in a bikini on the presidential seal in a mock-up of the Oval Office, and was that the headline was First Babe in 1999, and that was in America. That wasn't all that long ago. She was.
So that was when she was dating Donald Trump, and when he was first talking about running for president.
And that is important because people say, "Oh, she just wanted to be this rich lady in New York." think of that. That was 1999. She
Yeah.
has been she was interviewed. I put in the book all the interviews that she had in 1999 and 2000 about being a first lady. She said, I'd back him up. She went with him in around 2000 to Miami. You know, Florida has been an important state for a long time, with a bunch of Cuban Americans. And Trump was heard telling all kinds of people what an asset having her with him, because all the guys, the veterans of the Bay of Pigs, were all riveted on Melania. And Melania was causing a bit of a sensation as this young babe that he was with. And he thought and told people early on that he would get votes from guys who thought, oh, any guy that's able to attract this babe, you know, he'll get my vote. So he's been thinking of it a long time, and she has been on board a long time.
You know, I did notice that there were not a lot of nude photos of her in your book.
The photos, that's a whole book to write about the photos of Melania. First of all, she has rights in a way that no other first lady would. So she was able to begin controlling photos, and she will only give you permission to print some photos that she's in if she wants to. So she didn't want to cooperate this book, so they're not in there. Trump people have also threatened some photographers. I talked to several photographers who said, even though these photos are mine and I have every right to them, I got a call that said that we will bury you in expensive litigation. We don't care if we win or not. You cannot publish them. Also, I thought it was really interesting that she was in this ad where it was for a watch, a luxury watch, but in it, she's in the shower with another male actor. And she's, you know, she's not wearing anything in the shower. And those used to be online, and I couldn't find them. I had a really hard time. I ultimately found the people involved in making it, and I do have that in the book. But they have gone to lengths to, you know, scrub the internet, I guess, is probably what.
Well, Trump came up with a great line when he walked in and saw her in the shower with this guy, and she's getting out of the shower, and he says, looks at the guy, says, well, I guess I'm up against some stiff competition.
You remembered that line, Sally.
But he didn't seem to be upset by it, which I thought was interesting.
That was a long time ago. He gets more upset about things like that these days, I think.
Yeah, but you know, getting back to her personality and her earlier life, one of the things that just fascinated me is that it's almost like there's no past. She has no past. She goes in Slovenia, then she leaves, and there's no friends there. She has no memories there. People don't, you know, remember much about her. She has no contact. Then she goes to Milan, and then that's over. And then she goes to Paris or Vienna, right, to New York, and there are no friends. And they're, you know, so she's a real loner. In a lot of ways. And I noticed one guy talked about how, well, that it was sort of, you said she doesn't leave a trace. And it's like, it reminds me of those camping trips where you leave no trace. You even take the porta potties with them, you know. I mean, that once she's gone, she's gone. And then there's sort of nothing left. I mean, she's there. Somebody said she's like a ghost. Everyone knows her, but nobody knows her.
And it's, you know, when you don't have people from when you were growing up or when you were a beginning model, and, you know, those people weren't around when she met Trump. And one person said to me, you know, this woman, you know, Trump had 2 wives and had girlfriends or dates. Then this woman showed up, and no one knew anything about her. We never saw her bring anybody out to dinner or to a party. And, you know, it was though she had no past. And then it was fascinating that at the wedding, about 99%, even more, 99.9% of the people at that wedding, there were 350 guests, they were all people that she had met with Trump. Her mother was there, and her sister and her father. and the agent who brought her to America. And then pretty much everybody else was famous. And actually, many of those guests, by the way, were not even close to Donald Trump, but they were famous and there for the spectacle. That's what they said, actually. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were among them.
Right. Their best friend. Well, you know, a lot of the people that you talked to said, you know, we thought we were her friend, and then she left and dropped out, and we never heard from her, and she didn't, her former roommate, and wouldn't take his, never took his call, never saw her again. That they, a number of people felt used, that she'd come in their life, she'd befriended them, she'd used them, and then she dropped them, and they never saw or heard from her again.
I don't know if they felt used, but they, like, there was a photographer who had really helped her out, and then nothing, you know. I think, but a lot of people were really puzzled about how couldn't you, like the guy who she lived with in New York. I mean, it was a platonic relationship. He was a photographer. She arrives, they have a good time, you know, he has a girlfriend, but you know, it was like a friend situation. And when she met Trump, that was it, cut out of life. And, you know, it's probably, as many people said, she didn't want people to know how ordinary her life was. You know, that at that time, she was sharing a 1-bedroom, right? She had sharing a bathroom. She was shopping at Crate and Barrel. You know, there was a styrofoam wall that was kind of splitting this little apartment. And so could be that even though Melania, like Trump, very confident, that there, you know, also insecurities about, you know, hey, now I'm with all these really rich people, and do I really want to talk that much about where I came from? You know, she came from a socialist country. They lived like everybody else in the same apartment, in the same kind of a high rise. You know, everyone made the same amount of money. You know, it was like modest.
This guy who was her roommate, who later said that she dropped him and that he tried to call and she didn't call back. But he describes her life as just that she was a complete loner, and that she never seemed to have any friends. And most people would say that. She didn't have any friends. She didn't go out. She didn't drink. Neither one of them drinks, which is another thing that they have in common.
Right.
And that she would sit home in her bathrobe and watch Friends, the TV series.
I think she was disciplined and focused. Yeah. She wanted to be a success.
And but nowhere in the book is anything about any other boyfriend. Did she date?
Yes, she did date. I mean, I talked to people who said they dated her, but she has wiped that out. Donald Trump. People have said to me that the most angry they had ever seen Donald Trump was when Marla Maples was caught with this other guy, you know, in the middle of the night. And that is just one thing he cannot tolerate. He doesn't like it. He doesn't want to even think about it, you know, which is ironic because he certainly has had a lot of girlfriends, even while married, according to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. And I think that Melania that was just yet another convenient thing to erase, right? She never talks about it, but she did have boyfriends. I talked to somebody that said right before she came to America, there was a wealthy guy in France that she was dating. He had given her a car, and he called saying she just left. She just returned the car and left. Apparently she had gotten the okay to get the visa to come to America, the job. And she was 26 years old, and she just left. She was,
but no sort of romance that anybody can remember. You know, one of Donald Trump's friends said, you know, I've never once heard him talk about a woman romantically. He talks about his work romantically, but he's basically in love with himself. And
that, by the way, was his lawyer by name in the book, yes, saying that.
Yeah, but you get the sense that both of them, neither one of them is particularly romantic, and that, you know, she latched onto him, and they were together for what, 7 years or 9 years, something, before they got married.
They were together about 7 years. It's still unclear exactly when they met, despite the story they tell.
At the time, you know, before and even while he was with her, he's with all these women, And she's with nobody.
Well, I just don't believe
No,
either side of that is not true, according to
Yeah.
people I talked to. He was not with a lot of people. A lot of that was, the famous Trump machine.
Yeah.
For instance, one of those people he was supposedly with was Kylie Bax. She was a hot New Zealand model at the time. She was on the cover of a lot of things. She was 23 years old. And Trump loved to go to the tennis matches, the US Tennis Open, and he had this box, and he made sure the box was right by the press table. He waited until it was a finals match, everyone was seated, and he walks in with Kylie Bax, so that in the New York Post, in the tabloid, it says, Donald with the latest hot babe. Well, I found Kylie Bax in New Zealand, where she is, and she said that was a joke. Like, we never went out. Like, I just, he said, hey, do you want to go to the match? So on his side, a lot of that was inflated. I mean, for instance, he had said that Madonna was after him. That wasn't true. He said, all kinds of things. And on Melania's side, it's very clear. I've talked to at least 4 different people who went on dates with her.
Well, I think, and maybe you said this, but it seems that neither one of them is particularly sentimental.
Right.
Neither one of them is particularly romantic. It does seem as though it was a marriage of convenience at some point, and neither one of them seems particularly sexual. And when you look at
Sally. Okay. Romance and sex is different for different people, but Go ahead.
Yes. But there he is, and they're married, and she has Barron. And 3 months or 4 months after she has Barron, he is having a fling, a one-night stand with not only Stormy Daniels, but with Karen McDougal at the same weekend, at the same golf tournament. And Stormy Daniels says to him, what about your wife? And he says, oh, well, don't worry about that. We sleep in separate bedrooms.
Right.
And according to your book, they still sleep in separate bedrooms. Are they on the same floor in the White House, or are they different floors?
They're on different floors at Bedminster. They used to be on the same floor. Right. And now I don't want to say the wrong thing about the configuration, but they've always had, even from the beginning, different bedrooms. He has a different schedule. He gets up at 5. He loves to put all his TVs on. He doesn't sleep all that much. They do lead wildly separate lives, but I don't want to say, because I have talked to people that say there is some connection there, that they have some kind of relationship. Mm-hmm. And relationships are different for everybody. Their relationship certainly was more cuddly in the early days. When Barron came along, according to everybody, he just stopped taking her out in New York, maybe she decided also not to go out. And there were ups and downs. And it was really bad when Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, she didn't, all that information came out. She was mortified, not just that it happened, but that the whole world knew, and that she had a son who knew. She didn't even go in the car with him from the White House to the State of the Union address. It's a 10-minute car ride. She took her own car. She stopped. She was supposed to go to Davos, didn't go. She has made it clear by disappearing when she's angry.
I think you said at one point that there was 34 days that she disappeared, that nobody knew where. That she wasn't in the public eye, that she didn't.
Well, that's part of this whole thing where the White House, we're just used to, if you ask the White House, what city is the first lady in, that they might tell you, or you ask, these questions, but they just don't respond. And she just went missing for 3 weeks, which is unusual,
Yeah.
And what, Anita McBride, who was Laura Bush's chief of staff and knows a lot about the White House, works the White House Historical Association. She said, Melania, in the future, there are going to be other spouses of the president, and the spouse could be a man, could be a woman, but Melania really has broken the mold and changed the expectations in a way. Like after this, she didn't answer questions. She's not elected. She really has kind of changed the expectations of the office.
What about the rumors that her parents have a house somewhere near Barron School and
No, not
they-
only myself, but I know a lot of reporters have tried to. That rumor was so rampant, you know, it was all people were talking about, and it was because. So I don't believe it. I didn't find it. I tried. I asked everybody, and what I was told, you know, the Secret Service knows where she is at all times.
Of course, yeah.
And she doesn't go into the West Wing where people see her as first ladies you often do. You know, she doesn't no like little walkthrough or anything. It's just she's not there. She also doesn't really go into her own office that much. She's in a cocoon up in her private residence, and I think that is why there. You know, one of the reasons there was so wild rumors about, well, where is she? She's just always been that way. I talked to housekeepers. They spent a couple months. Melania, her mother, father, and Barron, for years, spent most of the summer in Bedminster. They're 500 acres outside New York and New Jersey. And they said it was, you know, some of these housekeepers said she would just stay inside all day long. He'd go golfing, he'd go to the club, she would eat in, she would sit in. You know, she seems to be quite content.
What do you think she does with her life?
She reads a lot. You know, at the White House, it's a problem because she reads everything about Trump and tells Trump who's criticizing him. And they get, you know, people around him are not necessarily happy about that because then it sends him into a bad mood. She reads a lot. She reads every magazine. She reads for hours.
About fashion, a lot of fashion magazines and things like that.
She, you know, I mean, I'm not sure, like, but I've heard also that she shops online and she loves fashion. You know, at one point she was talking about being a designer herself. She got a passport. She's a big mama bear. She does enormous amount of things for her son.
Right.
She's called the protector inside there, and she will do anything for him. She's, you know, she got, you know, the thing that surprised me, one of the things I found was that she got Barron Slovenian citizenship. I don't think people knew that until the book came out. And he has a passport. It's you know, it's not, it's just unusual to have the kid of the US president to have a foreign passport.
Well, also part of the prenup, wasn't it? Because she wanted to protect Barron and she wanted him to have the same advantages and the same position in the family business that the other children had. And
she, in fact, she wouldn't call it renegotiating the prenup. She said she would call it, I got to take care of Barron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of the other children, the Ivanka relationship, I think you mentioned that Ivanka, she calls Ivanka the princess and Ivanka calls her the portrait because she doesn't talk, and that Ivanka wanted to rename the First Lady's office the First Family's office. It would seem that there's not a warm and close relationship between the two of them.
And that's fair. You know, and there's also, like, within the White House, the tension comes and goes, and there's certain things that rev it up. But, you know, basically, if you're on Team Ivanka, Team Melania is very wary of you, and, you know, Trump is the referee a lot, and, you know, they're both former models who couldn't have grown up more differently.
When you talk about modeling and her, she's got this spa, you know, sort of a makeup room, hair and makeup and all that. And I think at one point somebody said that if she's preparing for a speech or whatever, and she's got 8 hours, she'll spend 7 hours in the makeup room and hair, and then 1 hour preparing for the speech. That she does care a lot about her appearance and her image, and so much of that is being a model. And it would seem to me that, you know, I would think one of the reasons she loves being First Lady is because it's the greatest photo op in the world. I mean, she just won. But I'm interested in that the two clothing issues. One of them was when she went to Egypt, and, you know, she had the pith helmet on in Africa, and then she had on the sort of Hollywood look at the pyramids, and she got very angry when the press criticized for these essentially costumes, and she said, I wish people would pay more attention to not to what I wear but to what I say. But the fact is that what she was wearing was what was drawing the attention and not what she was saying.
Right. And this is the huge dilemma. I mean, she has this platform, and people, particularly because she's an immigrant, why doesn't she speak out more on behalf of immigrants? You know, and, you know, I think some of the people saying, I wish she would spend less time on her appearance. But I also feel a bit for her. And I think any woman in public light, they get more scrutiny than men, you know, and, you know, she was a former model. I think she really feels that has to look perfect. She says, she describes herself as a perfectionist.
Now, what about the coat? Let's talk about the coat. So
wow, that was such a big mistake. In Slovenia, really good friends of the family were like, oh my God, why did she wear that coat? You know,
taking babies away from mothers in the border. And she goes down with stiletto heels and this coat that says, I don't really care, do you, on the back of it. She didn't need a coat because it was warm, hot. And they didn't back down on that. I mean, she wore it down there and she wore it back. And there was really no, the first one's first impression was, I don't care about the kids, because what was she trying to say? And then the White House came out with, well, it was really, I don't care about the media. And then she later said, well, it's because the media is hostile to me and I don't care what they say. But none of that really makes any sense to me. I mean, it's not an explanation because it was so in your face. Something else was going on. I don't know, maybe you have some.
I mean, I asked many people that, and they just said it was, you know, several people said it was partly to do with Ivanka. There was something going on. She was fed up with critics. She reads too much online, people criticizing her online. And, you know, she's like, anything I do, I'm criticized for. And it was like, I don't care about all the critics. I'm going to do, she was thinking, I'm going to go to the border and do what I can and change this policy where they're separating kids from their parents. And she was vocal about that, and it did change. It was, I think the most important thing that whole thing showed was that there's no one helping her. She's got no support. You know, she where's the office on that? You know, if she is it to do a frenzy about criticism? Like, didn't somebody see her walk out of the Rose Garden? You know, this is one of the things that other first ladies have had more support from the West Wing, more support from their husbands, more seasoned people around them than Melania has had.
She got Stephanie Grisham, who, you know, ended up being the president's press secretary, and then went back to her, who, by the way, said of your book, this book belongs in the fiction genre.
No, Stephanie only got into politics recently, right. You know, in Arizona. I mean, we're talking about, one of the things that has happened recently is she has Marcia Kelly, who is running the Republican National Convention, and she has gotten, beefed up a little bit, her office. But can you imagine? I mean, she's not born in this country. She is certainly savvy, but you need some help if you want to make an impression or you use your platform. And she.
So you talk about how she has an enormous amount of influence over him. And you know, that a lot of people you talk to, Chris Christie and Corey Lewandowski, will say, you know, don't cross her at your peril.
Right.
But he always calls her after a speech, and that he listens to her, that she was the one who basically said, choose Pence as your vice president, that she does have a lot of clout, and that he listens to her and she has influence. And yet, you know, he does these things, all these things every day that sort of have people outraged all day, every day, including other Republicans. And I mean, no matter what it is. And she sort of says, let Donald be Donald. So
right.
The question is, if she does have a lot of influence over him, how can she, does she think that, I mean, do they have the same moral compass? Because if she agrees to let him be Donald, then she basically is okay with the tweets, which most people are not, even the people who work for him, and okay with the name calling and the Charlottesville and the Muslim ban and calling people, being insulting and hurtful to people. So I wonder where her moral, how much of this is that she does have influence and she thinks it's okay what he's doing, or that she doesn't really have all that much influence?
She has influence, just to be clear. She's not involved in Middle East peace. She's not involved in a lot of policy. She doesn't know she's not consulted on Treasury, should we lower the interest rates. Where she has influence, especially as Trump has grown to distrust more and more people around him, she's one of the only people he trusts, is if you want to get hired and you don't want to get fired, you stay on Melania's good side. I heard that over and over again because he trusts her. He calls her in to basically vet, or, he wants her for any big hire, to hear her out. And, that's a big deal. That's where her influence is. And she weighs in on things about children's issues. She was into on the vaping issue, on the separating the kids at the border. But she's not, I'm not sure how much Trump knows ahead of time of some of the things he does. Like, she doesn't know what he's going to tweet before, other people. She has said, I don't like everything he does. I certainly don't like everything he says. But she thinks he's a good man. That's the pat answer she has given. But, I bet when the day starts, who knows? Trump doesn't even know everything he's going to do, and she certainly doesn't.
His staff doesn't. Well, we're out of time. I just want to ask you, or just say one more thing, and then we're going to open this up to questions. Mary, I think you have done an amazing job with this book. I have to say, I think everybody should read it, because it really, and I know that when you were working on the book, you were suicidal at one point.
It was awful, I must say. It was really, really hard.
It's really hard. Just, to get, to do the reporting.
I would find somebody who really knew a lot. He'd say, I would love to tell you I signed an NDA. They'll sue me,
I know. And so, for a reporter, the frustration was enormous, but you really nailed it. And I think everybody should read this book because it's fascinating. And I think it really does, more than you may think, give you a real window in who she is and really tell you what she's like.
Oh, thank you so
I
much.
think that I would just like to say that when I was reading it, the quote to me that stood out and that told me everything that I needed to know about Melania was when she was asked, would she be with her husband if he were not rich? And she shot back, if I weren't beautiful, do you think he would be with me? So I think that I'll leave you all with that, and then we'll open it up to questions.
That's great. Thanks, Sally. I do think you're right, that right there shows that, she's pretty savvy and quick.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Mark Rosenwasser, what totally surprised you about what you discovered?
Maybe fascinated is the best thing. I'm completely fascinated by her mother. Donald Trump says that Melania is his rock. The rock for Melania is her mother. Amalia is with her in the White House. She cooks for her. She takes care of Barron. She steadies her. She was her ambition. She's super talented. She's this factory worker who was this crazy talented seamstress, but never really made that much money and worked hard, shift after shift for 30 years in Slovenia. But she was gorgeous and elegant. And people told me in that little town, we used to call her Jackie for Jackie Kennedy because she was so good looking. This is Amalia, her mother. And just to think that Amalia is over there most nights in the White House and walks down to the Jackie Kennedy Rose Garden, I just think is great. And it's such an interesting story that I think a lot of Americans would like, but they don't want to tell it.
Okay. Karen Zale wants to know, what is the real history of her immigration and her parents' immigration?
This is the thing that is most important, I think. She is the first lady who doesn't speak English as her first language. She is only the second to ever be born outside the country, and the last one was 200 years ago, born in London. And she is an immigrant. Her husband's central platform was to build a wall, keep immigrants out. The story that never got a good answer for, and I wrote a lot about, was that she came here on a visitor's visa. And the Associated Press during the campaign found ledgers that showed that in the 6 weeks she was here, before she got her work visa, she had 10 modeling jobs. And and from then on, she kind of did everything legally. But when you have a president who happens to be your husband, who would kick somebody out of the country for a violation like that, you can't ignore it. She has said she's done everything legally. I've certainly spent a lot of time with her immigration lawyers, but I still think it's very odd that she won't show her exactly what she put on her papers to get the original visa. She has said it's private. Why should I? And she won't say who her original lawyer was. So in the same way that when Donald Trump wouldn't show his tax records, you kind of think, well, what's he hiding? Because she still won't tell some things about her own initial entry into the country. You just wonder what she's hiding. But having said that, I do want to say that, other lawyers who have worked for her have vouched for her and said she did everything by the book. And that 6 weeks where she has had some jobs is the only thing that I've ever heard that looked afoul.
She was at one TV show, she was very supportive of Donald Trump when he was talking about Obama and the birther issue, and kept saying, well, where's his passport? I mean, where's his birth certificate? Where's his birth certificate? But really backing Trump up on the birther thing.
And a lot of people, will never forgive her for that. And you can understand why.
Yeah, I know Michelle Obama even wrote about it in her book and said it was very hurtful.
I mean, it was amazing, she's, yes. So she has done things where she's backed him up, and you kind of wonder, why, how.
Well, and so then Donald Trump gives a speech about the chain migration or chain immigration, where people are actually they come in and then they bring their parents in, and the crowd is going boo, and it's horrible, and he's just terrible, and oh my God. And then 3 days later, her parents become citizens because she's of chain migration, that she's brought her parents in.
Can you believe that? I mean, this, to me, it's just beyond the beyond, that the president basically is like, okay, it's fine for my family. My wife has brought in, both her parents are US citizens. And I found out in the book that her sister now is a permanent resident. That's chain migration. That's the thing that he goes up and screams about. And, how can you not say that's hypocritical? But that's him, She has allowed her attorney to go on TV and criticize Trump's talk about chain migration. This is one of the very few times, but again, it's not her. People say it's not enough. We want her to say something. I talked to undocumented people who were working for the Trumps, who, clean their bathrooms. And they said, gee, I just wish she would say something. She's an immigrant. They're like, we really like her mother and her father. Sometimes they slip us tips. And they said that Melania is nice to them as well. But why doesn't she speak up? I think it's a big frustration of a lot of people. How can you be an immigrant that loves this country? And, she doesn't say much, but what she says is, I did this legally. I'm, of course, for immigration. She let her immigration attorney go on TV and clearly said she was for family reunification. And he really identified on the screen as Melania's lawyer slams what Trump said. That was one of those times where she really seemed to be signaling, I don't agree with this at all.
This is from Michelle Spencer. During the Helsinki summit, there was a fair amount of speculation regarding her reaction immediately following her shaking Putin's hand. While you were researching for the book, were you able to get any idea as to how she feels and thinks about Putin and or other Eastern European figures or oligarchs?
I think the most interesting thing, I was looking because a lot of people were interested in that, like, had she ever met him? Had she been to Russia? I could not find any trips over that way. I don't think she speaks Russian. I think it's fascinating that she and Trump spoke to Putin and a translator. There was no American translator there. That 15 minutes, she's been a witness to these extraordinary moments, including with Putin. She knows a lot. But, I think the disappointment in Slovenia is that she doesn't really talk about where she came from. She doesn't talk about Central Europe or Eastern Europe. She talks about New York, and it's one of the reasons that you would think that the First Lady is from Slovenia. She would be a really big deal in Slovenia, and she's quite divisive over there, mainly because she doesn't talk about them.
This is from Lorna Grenadier. She said, could you please, I'm having something's just popped up on the screen. Could you please talk about her relationship with her parents and their relationship with Trump? And I know that you've said that Barron speaks Slovenian and that they all speak it together and that Trump doesn't know what they're talking about. Does Trump spend a lot of time with the parents?
No. Melania, her father, mother, and Barron often have dinner together. And they speak, because the parents speak very rudimentary English, it's mostly Slovenian. So the Secret Service don't know what they're saying. Trump doesn't know. Trump has been heard saying, like it annoys him. He has no idea what they're saying. They often eat together. They eat healthy food that her mother cooks. Trump likes his French fries and hamburgers and ketchup, and he eats separately on a different schedule. They don't spend a lot of time together. There was an amazing story that I heard at Bedminster from 3 of the people that work there, that Trump in his bedroom has this pile where he puts things, and you're not allowed to throw anything away unless it's in that pile, So he put a red cap in that pile, and Melania's mother somehow saw it, and she said, oh, it's fine. My husband, Melania's dad, will wear it. Gave it to the dad. The dad put the red cap on and went out to the golf course at Bedminster, and Trump went crazy and in front of other people said, take that off. Everyone knows I'm the only one who wears a red cap. And Victor, Melania's father, was just furious, embarrassed. And I don't think they spent a lot of time together, but, on the other hand, Victor is very close to Barron. They spend a lot of time in the White House. I think they can't believe they live in the White House. They spend a huge amount of time there. They can't believe their daughter's First Lady.
We're almost out of time. We have time for one more question. What do you make of her choosing to contradict Trump with her Be Best anti-bullying campaign?
I kind of think that she got a huge amount of blowback. They told her, don't do this, but she went ahead with it. But you will notice she hasn't kept it up much, and she didn't get a lot of funding to do a lot of things, but it was pretty big move when it happened. Can you imagine? He invented that. He was, he's calling everybody names, and she gets up and she says, this is terrible, when it's not a good example to the kids.
Well, do you think that she did that on purpose to stick it to him?
I think, she over and over, when I interviewed her during the campaign, she used the word, I'm independent, like 6 times. I think she just thought this was terrible what was going on. She had a kid, she saw it. I know she knows that her husband is one of the name callers and taunters in chief. So yeah, of course.
You said we're talking about the what she'll do after, assuming he loses, or, 4 years from now, if he loses, what she'll do. And he's always said he hated it so much when Ivana worked, because he didn't want a wife working. It was horrible, and he didn't want to come home and talk about work. But clearly she will probably do, have fashion something. She'll do something in the fashion business, or furniture, or whatever, design. And how is that going to work out if he wants her to be with him all day and not have to, deal with her?
Well, that's what's so interesting about them. They don't spend that much time together, and she likes that there's no demands from him. I really thought it was interesting. I went through the trademarks, and she has trademark Melania, not with Trump. And, she has kind of, if she creates something, she doesn't have to do it with the Trump org, because the problem before Trump said was, I didn't want, her to be talking about the job, and Ivana was running things within the Trump org. I think she will do whatever she can to help Barron. I see a lot of her working with Barron in time to come.
Mary, thank you. I think it's 9:01. Brad, are you
Thanks,
there?
Sally. I appreciate that you read that book so closely. You picked great stuff to talk
about. It's riveting.
Thank you.
Brad, do you want to say goodnight?
Thanks, Mary and Sally, for really a truly fascinating discussion. There's so many revelatory details about Melania and Mary's book. They lift so much of the mystery and still leave us wondering. It's just so intriguing. Again, the title of Mary's book is The Art of Her Deal, and you can get a copy or several by clicking on the link that we've posted in the chat column. Thanks again to everyone out there for tuning in. From all of us here at Politics and Prose, stay well and well read.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Mary. You were great. The book is great. Buy the book right now.